And the reason that he sold it is because you can see got in a little bit of an accident. So, you know, you got the damage here on the fender, and the tire got all scratched up and everything, the wheel I mean. And then of course the biggest damage is this passenger door doesn't close all the way. So, you know, water and bugs can get in and everything through here, and you can't open it because it gets crunched right there. Okay, so I'm working on this new 2004, and the first thing that I did was take the passenger side fender off to try and figure out what's going on with the door that wouldn't open and that also wouldn't seal on the top. Now, one thing I did do actually already was I took off the driver's side fender and switched it with the one that had been in an accident on my 2005 Montero. So you can see it's not perfect, but I managed to get it, other than that little bit right there. Got this little dent, got this gap, but not too bad. So that can stay on there for now. Then on this side, I took it off to investigate what's going on here, because what I want to do is eventually, when a silver one pops up in the junkyard, grab a new fender to replace the crumpled up one from the accident and a new door. And you know what I was going to do maybe in the meantime, so I found a new door, and instead of having to run around with plastic sheeting taped over this to keep the rain out, I was like, well, maybe I'll just grab the door off of Reggie, the 2001, and put it on here and just drive around with like a black door and a black fender on an otherwise silver car. No big deal. But I said to myself, well, we don't even know if it's a door issue. Like, what if the frame, like the body is messed up and it won't take a new door, and whatever new door you put on there, that'll be crooked too. So the first step was really removing this fender. And now that that's done, I look over here and I don't really see anything wrong with the body. It looks pretty much fine. I mean, there's a little bit of like a fold right here, but that doesn't affect the door. So I'm like, maybe it's the door is bent a little bit. But then I look at the door and like there's maybe a little bit of a crease here, but nothing significant. And I'm looking at the door, I'm like, I don't think there's anything wrong with this door either. So I think what happened is it just got the impact just kind of tweaked it on the hinges, because the hinges have an adjustment, have movement built into them so that you can get the door to fit and seal perfectly. So as you can see here on the factory service manual, page 4226, it talks about how to adjust the door. So if your door is letting in too much wind noise or water, you can adjust the door. And the way that this would normally be done is with a special door hinge tool. You can see guy's using it in here, and he's on the inside of the vehicle. And so what he would do is he would open up the door, and then here at the hinge you've got these two, a stud with a nut here and then a bolt here, and same thing on the bottom hinge. And what you would do is you would loosen these up and then close the door and position it so that like all your gaps and everything is, you know, even. Line up the height with this one, you know, just make sure everything is exactly where you want it. You can insert shims, or you could just have like your buddy hold the door in place while you on the inside of the vehicle with this special tool, you can be sitting here with the door closed, and you could put your wrench, I think, on a nut, and you could, with the door closed, operate that ratcheting wrench, because it's got like a kink in it and allows you to use it. But we don't have that special tool, but that's okay, because I realized that if we close the door, those are all now accessible with the fender off. So my plan is, as you can see here, I've loosened those hinge bolts, and so the door is all over the place. You can see it's like hitting the rear door. So my plan is to have someone hold the door like that to where the gap is nice and perfect. As you can see, it's not sticking out anymore. And then I'll just hit those bolts over there with the impact, and The other thing that I should mention that needs to be loosened and then adjusted is the striker, and it talks about the striker in the next portion of the factory service manual. You're going to need a big Phillips head screwdriver, but I'm hesitant to say Phillips because Monteros use Japanese Imperial Standard fasteners, which are slightly different than Phillips head, and these are kind of notorious. They can be prone to stripping out, so you want to make sure that you have really good engagement on them. And you can also use one of those impact hammers to loosen them up. I'll put a link to that below. But yeah, these are Japanese Imperial Standard screwdrivers. I got them on Amazon, and they get a much firmer grasp on fasteners. You're less likely to round things out, so I'll put a link to these as well. And you know, they're not the end all be all in screwdrivers. Like, they don't have every feature. They don't have a cap that's hammer safe. They don't have a hex shank here, so you can get a wrench on them to give you more leverage, but they were a good basic set and they work just fine and give you better engagement. So I've got the striker kind of loose, and then what I'll do is most likely move it as far in. This can be adjusted up, down, left, right. I'll move it in to the right as much as possible, and that'll hold the door tight as possible up against this wall, which is going to take up most of that gap that we had up here that was letting in water. So that's the plan. Let's see how it goes. All right, so as you can see, by playing with those hinge bolts and the striker on the inside, we've got this thing pretty much perfect. The gap looks great. It's not really sticking out much further than the rear doors. It's about equal on the driver's side like it was from the factory. So I'm thinking this looks really good. Might have just solved what was looking much worse and looking like it was going to need a lot more work with just an adjustment. Okay, got a liter of water. If it's going to leak, it's going to leak right here where those two doors come together. Okay. Let's give that a second to run down before I open up that door. All right, let's check it out. Dry. There's nothing here. I was thinking that something might sneak past here and run down, which wouldn't be the end of the world because it would still be on the outside of the seal, but there's nothing. I'm going to call this fixed. Thanks for watching. I learned something today.